off your engine!
Here we go with Chrysler recalls. Fiat Chrysler America is recalling 160,000 Ram 1500s for mats that can interfere with the gas pedal. Well, these goofballs came up with the idea that you can move the brake pedal and the gas pedal to adjust to your leg length, right? I mean, that stuff's been out for a long time. But the knuckleheads also put in special ribbed mats in many of them. And it turns out that if you adjust them too far away, that they can get stuck in the ribs. And then you go screaming down the road because the accelerator pedal's stuck. People started complaining, oh, my gas pedal got stuck on this thing here. Let's put on our thinking caps. Maybe they could have made mats that didn't interfere with it. These are rib mats. It hits the ribs. Maybe think, oh, well, this is adjustable. It can hit the ribs. Don't put ribs in the part where the accelerator pedal comes down. Now they're telling people if you own one, take your mats out immediately so you don't get killed, and then you'll sue them for even more money. They don't say what the fix is. Maybe the fix is to cut the ribs off in that area. As Scotty says, why did they just design it right in the first place? Don't put ribs in the part where it could stick, and put ribs on the other part, on the very bottom where it doesn't really matter. I mean, they can't even engineer floor mats correctly anymore. That kind of says something about Fiat Chrysler, doesn't it? Something as simple as a floor mat. They can't even engineer it correctly to the vehicle they're putting them in. Ronnie's 281 says, I got a 96 GT Mustang, replaced the battery, and when I try to start it, it just clicks. Starters that just click when you have a new battery. You know, the battery power is good. There's only two things that generally go wrong. One, the cables themselves are either corroded or loose, or they connect and bolt on. Check to make sure that those things are nice and tight, not corroded. Because any loose connection, you won't get enough power to the starter, and it will just click. Now, the other very common thing is the starter itself is just bad. When the starter itself is bad, it'll just click because the solenoid clicks, but the starter motor doesn't work, so it won't spin the engine. Check those two and pray that it's not a relatively uncommon thing, but the worst thing it could possibly be, which is a locked up engine. If your engine's locked up, the starter can't turn it because the engine's locked up. To check that is real simple. Just get a long extension bar for your socket, put the socket on the front of the engine and the bottom of the crank bolt, and try to turn it around. And if you can turn it 1 or 2 turns, you know, it's not locked up. But if you can't and it doesn't move anymore, the engine's locked up and stop right there because you're going to have to rebuild the engine. Alberto ZZZ says, I have a 2001 Nissan Sentra SE. Do you think it's worth to swap to a manual transmission? No. It is such a job to take the automatic transmission out, fit a standard in, find where to put the shifter linkage, then put a clutch pedal on it. The computer would be set up for an automatic, not for a standard. Don't even bother. The Sentra's not worth anything anyways. Go find one that already has a standard transmission if you really want, but don't swap them. I've had customers in the past attempt to swap cars from automatic to standard, and it is such a rat's nest of insanity. I would never advise anybody to try it. Sean Blank says, what do you think of a 2015 Jetta 2.0 non-turbo engine? All right, Volkswagen makes decent engines. Most of the German manufacturers make pretty good engines. That's a non-turbo, so it can last quite some time. Unfortunately, the rest of the car cannot. The electronics go out. All the plastic crap breaks on them. The door handle come off. They're just cheaply made. But they do have good engines. Without a turbo on it, they can last a long time as long as you change the oil regularly. The Germans always were good at making engines. That wasn't their problem. The main problem is too much high technology that breaks down and costs a fortune to fix when it breaks down, and they all do on Volkswagens as they age. Samuel Young says, do you consider catch cans necessary for GDI engine produced in the last 2 years? Well, not for most of them, because many of them are the dual system, like the Toyota system, where they have fuel injectors that are normal ones on the intake. Then they also have the GDI injectors that are built into the engine block, and it uses both, and they don't get any buildups, and a lot of manufacturers have gone that way. So if it has a dual system, don't waste your money on something like that. But if it doesn't and only has the GDI injectors, I would still put one on it if I had one of those. But I wouldn't buy one of those. Gorge Ramirez says, hello, Scotty. What are your thoughts on an 09 Honda CR-V? Thanks for the response. All right, great vehicles. The Honda CR-Vs are great vehicles. The only real problem they ever had was that for some years, the idiots put air conditioning compressors on them, and they made the main shaft too thin. Instead of being thick like your thumb, it's thin like your little finger. And they would snap off. You have to replace the air conditioning compressor. Not a Honda side. They didn't make them. They bought them from another company. They just bought them from the wrong company. But other than that, they're extremely reliable vehicles. They're well made. And Honda makes their own transmissions for them, so they're good transmissions. Chris Bucerella says, my My son's '07 Toyota Matrix, loud exhaust sounds coming from the engine, not the muffler. What's the most common thing to start with? All right, what often happens is there is a flex pipe under there, and it's made out of stainless steel. When they finally crack, then the noise comes out. Go under there and feel around that. The other one is where the exhaust pipe bolts onto the exhaust header manifold. A lot of times there's a little donut gasket in there, and that goes bad and starts making noise. When the engine is cold, first thing in the morning, jack it up, then crawl under there, have them start it, and feel it with your hands before it's hot, and you'll actually be able to feel where the exhaust is coming out. That's how I check them. Loves my kid. He says, Scotty, I have a 6-year-old battery. It says it's a 7-year type. Should I replace it? Well, you know what I'd do if I were you? Find a guy like me with a fancy machine. Load test it. If it says it's got less than 30% capacity, yeah, get another one. But it's over 30%, just keep it. You never know. You might have got one only really good battery made, because here in Houston with the AC in the summer, I rarely get 3 years out of any of my batteries. It doesn't matter what I buy. If I buy the cheapest ones or the most expensive ones. So have it tested. If it's got more than 30% life, just leave it in. Mari says, Scotty, I got a 2000 Honda Accord with 340,000 miles. How long do you think before it dies? It's great. It's got a V6. Well, you obviously take care of your vehicle, so keep doing what you're doing. You never know. I've seen some of them had 500,000 miles on it. You got 340. Baby it, take care of it, change the oil out. You've obviously been doing something, right? You got that kind of mileage on it, so what the heck? You never know. It could last 500,000 miles. You keep taking care of it. They don't make them like they used to either. I doubt if the newer ones will go that far, but that one has. Keep driving it. James Barger says, Scotty, we're looking at getting a new patrol SUV. They're looking at 2021 Ford Explorer Interceptor. If they fix the garbage 10-speed transmissions. Well, I don't know if they fixed those garbage transmissions yet, but I would never buy one of those things, the Ford Explorer Interceptors, because a couple weeks ago I was talking to one of my customers, a policeman, and he was griping to me. He said, man, those new Ford Explorer Interceptors we have, what piles of crap. He says, every week something's breaking on one of them. He said, I still love the old Crown Vics because they still have a few old Crown Vic police cars, and as old as they are, he said, they're still going down the road with their V8 engines. They don't have any problems. And GDI on the Explorers, or even worse, the 4-cylinder engines with 1 turbo and GDI, they just wear out. They have problems. I would not buy one of those vehicles, and I would not recommend anybody purchasing one either. Jack Werner says, I got an '05 Ford Escape, has a massive brake fluid leak. I can see there's fluid all around the transmission dripping down. Help. All right. Well, odds are it's a brake line that's broken there. But understand, when you step on the brake, there's an awful lot of pressure inside that brake system that's being pushed by the brake booster. It's a lot of PSI. So all you got to do is, with the jacked up in here and sitting on jack stand so it's safe, have somebody slam the brakes on as hard as they can. If it keeps sinking to the floor, just keep pumping them and stepping on them while you're under there. Maybe wear some goggles so brake fluid doesn't squash you, but it's going to come squirting out of that hole so fast you will see the hole. And it's probably a pinhole in one of the metal lines that goes over the transmission. Probably something rubbed over the period of time, but there's so much pressure in the brake system, you want to find a leak. Just have one person slam on the brakes while you're under there looking around. You're going to see it squirting out of a hole somewhere. Kind of easy to find brake fluid because it's a very high pressure system when you floor it, especially if you start the car up first and then you have the power booster going and have somebody keep pumping it. As long as you have fluid in the master cylinder, don't get air in it, keep pouring fluid in there and have somebody pump the brakes. Maybe you have 3 guys, one to pump the brakes, one to put fluid in the canister, and you to crawl under to find where the leak's coming from. But once you do, it's going to be easy to find because it's a high-pressure system and it will squirt out. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.